I can maybe try to see. Can I see which mic? Sorry about the issues, everybody. Trying to hack doing a proper workshop. But all right. Oh, and now it's feeding through. Yeah, let's just.
I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it. Just keep going.
Okay.
All right. Next up. Awesome. We can.
You guys can hear us,
can hear us
right?
now.
Yeah. Sorry about everyone who's joining in online.
We didn't realize the mic wasn't working the entire time we were talking. Okay, perfect.
Honestly, just some housekeeping in the start.
Yeah.
Yes. We just introduced the execs and our constitution as well as our election. You guys can find it all on our constitution, which is on our website and I believe on our Discord.
That's right.
So you missed nothing.
Yeah.
So our club culture, in the past and also in the present, we have been trying to get more people to join who are outside of computer science and engineering, you know, going into or hearing about information security. It kind of seems a little scary, especially when you're first starting off and you don't really know much. That's what our workshops are for. You know, if you don't know much, little to none, it's okay. We welcome people of, I guess, all skills in terms of this. Even us execs, we're still learning every day. So not knowing anything is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it means that you're here to learn. You joined our club to learn, and that can take you far. We also like to help one another. So we have our office hours, which will be announced later on. We have our challenge of the week, which again will be explained a little later. And then we have our workshops. Something about workshops we'll discuss later is that they are extremely beginner friendly, especially this one. We're going to be teaching you guys about Linux commands, primarily, specifically Kali Linux commands. And yeah, we encourage you all to first try out some of our challenges and our workshops, ask questions later.
All right. What do we actually do? And I think, Ethan, you have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, so everyone here is probably somewhat familiar about the workshops since we're all here. During these workshops, we go over some basic ideas, go over some, give some information about like different aspects of information security, which includes web exploitation, binary exploitation, so pwning, reverse engineering, and all that good stuff. And then we also go into some advanced topics during our winter. And all of these workshops are going to be held Mondays at 6 p.m., just like we're having here. If anyone has come to our club before, we are shifting our workshops a slight bit. We are no longer doing advanced workshops, but focusing on beginner workshops for the fall semester. And then during the winter semester, that's when we get to all come together and try out some, you know, more intriguing, more specific topics, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a good number of very interesting ones. Social engineering is coming up like next week. So if anyone is interested to, you know, talk their way through into a building or something, maybe, I don't know.
Ethically.
We do not encourage unethical behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, it is actually a part of our constitution where you guys have to do all of this ethically and all that, but it's still good to know, I must say.
Yes. To emphasize what Ethan just said, we provide these workshops as a learning experience for you. Ideally, if you'd like to one day work in security legally, we provide the skills, I guess, for you to start off, as well as networking opportunities to start off. we are not responsible for any information we provide to you that you use unethically.
Yeah.
That is also in our constitution. Just to put that out there.
Little favorite teacher appreciating you both.
Yeah. Long story short, don't be a bad person.
Don't blame us for being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not our fault if you get in trouble.
What I'm very excited to announce this year, and we've kind of hinted at the throughout this workshop, or I guess our talk so far, is our new challenge of the week. And effectively, these are CTF challenges that are coming out every single week, including this week, which I will be posting onto our Discord very shortly. And what these are again, CTF challenges that basically test your skills, tries to apply your knowledge in information security, but also in like digital systems and all that. And it effectively acts like a year-long CTF, if anyone's interested. We start this week, and we're going to start pretty easy. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the difficulty is going to ramp up throughout the year. And so if you're interested in honing in your skills and applying what you learned here, I highly recommend the challenge of the week. It's going to be weekly during the fall, and then bi-weekly in the winter as things get harder. And on that note, because we now have workshops and challenge of the week, we're splitting our leaderboards into two. So we're going to have a workshop leaderboard for everyone who's joining us here tonight. There's still flags in these workshops. There's still ways you can rise to the top, beat everyone around you in a friendly way, of course. But for anyone who has been to our workshops before, kind of know the ropes, and are less interested in our workshops, the challenge of the week will also have its own separate leaderboard in order to facilitate, in order to prevent any overlapping points in the story. So everyone has a fair footing.
Yeah, just another thing to note, because our fall workshops are more beginner friendly than they were last year, the challenge of the week is a great way to supplement it. So if you are looking for a little more advanced, I guess, challenges, the challenge of the week is for you, especially considering they're supplementary. We also highly encourage feedback because we want to know whether or not to continue these challenge of the weeks. Ethan here was working very hard on them, so we want to know whether or not you enjoy them, that we should just bring them back in the fall and in years to come. So for our speakers, we have, I guess our plan is to have 4 speakers for this term. So we're going to start off with Dr. Joel Reardon. And if any of you guys know him and his research, he is an incredibly interesting professor. His research is also extremely interesting and very much on topic. So check him out soon in October. We also have Eric Lutz, who background is primarily networking, but now works in security, MRI security. So check him out as well. I heard he has great stories about his experiences in security thus far. So yeah.
As an additional note, if anybody attended the speaker series last year, you'll know they had some really, really interesting stuff to tell. So when people from the actual industry come in to talk about what they've experienced, what they've learned, it's really, really worth it to attend. So if you have the time, please join these and you'll be able to learn a lot from this.
Yes, and just to note, our speaker series is going to be online. It's not going to be hybrid. It's not going to be in person. It's going to primarily be online because, especially last year, a lot of our speakers came from outside of the city. So we didn't really deem it feasible to have it in person or hybrid. And and with COVID still kind of lurking, but not really, there's a possibility that some of our speakers are more comfortable speaking from home or in their office rather than traveling to the university. So keeping that in mind, we're going to keep it online.
Question.
Oh yeah.
Are they going to be recorded?
Speaker series, I believe.
I believe so, though we haven't confirmed whether or not we would do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Our previous speaker series, most of them have been recorded in the past, and they should be on our YouTube channel now. At first, they were unlisted, but I think we listed them. We'll have to double check on that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay.
They're still
then
unlisted. Okay, we'll fix that.
all right.
So for our CTF, something that we are, I guess, the most known for, we are bringing back Magpie CTF this year, our 3rd annual Magpie CTF. This year is a little more special because we're going to have it hybrid for the first time. In the past, because it was done during COVID, we have made it online. Highly recommend you guys join. We have some new sponsors potentially joining us and helping us out this year. So pretty excited for that. Our theme this year is space. So we're going to continue on that story with the Omni Flag Corporation. Maybe. So stay tuned for that. Really cool. Highly recommend. And it'll be super fun and enjoyable, especially the storyline.
Yeah. By raise of hands, who knows what a CTF is? Okay. Most people. For those who don't, a CTF, as I mentioned earlier, is a capture the flag competition, but you're not physically going around grabbing poles with tarps on them. What you're doing is you are being given challenges on the internet. So whether that be files, whether that be websites, servers, something like that, and you are meant to find a piece of text or a string that is easily identifiable. And once you find that, that is called the flag. You submit the flag to our website or to our server or to the CTF website, and that will grant you points. In the end, the people who have the most points from capturing flags win the CTF. It's very, very fun. It's an easy way to put what skills you've learned to the test, and it's also an excellent way to learn. So highly recommend. If you're feeling engaged in the club, absolutely join our CTF. There are cash prizes. So there's going to be more information about the CTF in the coming couple weeks. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. Just to note, if you are a beginner, we highly recommend you join our CTF. I know when I first joined as a member, I didn't really know anything, little to nothing actually. And I decided to join the first CTF competition as a member, Heist Edition. And, I didn't get far the first time, but it was fun. And it is a great learning experience, especially for those easier challenges. The workshops will help you. So if you watch the workshops, even if you watch the recordings, we highly recommend you join and participate in our CTF. As Dan mentioned, there are lots and lots of prizes, not just winning prizes, but other prizes, draws, etc. And stay tuned for that.
All right. Oh, yes, you have a question.
You mentioned that it would be hybrid, the CTF.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What do you mean by hybrid?
So our CTF will be hosted online, but for the opening ceremony and closing ceremony, for example, will be in person. We're going to be booking a room so people can participate online. Online and come in person. Come in person, just in case they need questions, just in case you want to work with your team in person. We may have food and refreshments as well. You have the opportunity to connect with some execs, maybe even some sponsors. And it's just a great opportunity to be in person, join the event in person, and kind of get that experience, something that you won't normally get online. A lot of our stuff will be still hosted online, so it'll still be accessible for people outside of Calgary, outside of UFC, etc.
That's good.
Do we have any other questions?
That's not good. All right. Good timing.
Wow. For those online,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Our room's been hacked.
Wow.
That is really unfortunate.
Yes.
Did the whole thing shut down?
It
Yeah.
did.
Yeah,
And there's a
it's
login
shut
code.
down.
So, then we'll start off with the basic Kali terminal commands and tools workshop. We did post our workshop link on Discord. If you don't have Discord or our Discord on hand, you can go onto our YouTube channel or our Twitch at InfoSecU Calgary to check it out while we're troubleshooting this. If you go back,
Sorry about the technical difficulties,
just make
everyone.
sure, if you don't already have Kali Linux downloaded, make sure to have that downloaded to follow along.
Next, this is Kali Linux. I want to make preface. Kali Linux, you don't have to have it installed for this workshop. We will have you SSH. If you don't know what SSH is, you will soon. We'll have you SSH into a server where you get to do everything and you get to practice all that you've learned throughout the workshop in basically a Linux terminal. So if we could fix this real quick, because this sucks. Let me figure this out.
Go back to the slide.
To the slides, I'm trying. Yep. Yep.
Just give us a moment.
Yep. Because I don't want to show stream. All right, so if everyone's watching from YouTube or Twitch, hopefully you can see the screen. Hopefully my mic is also working this time, and from the feedback, it seems that yes, it is picking up. So, if we go here, slideshow. Awesome, we can manage this now. All right. Finally, we can get onto the workshop. That was
Not fun.
That was not fun, and that was incredibly timed. But finally, we can get into what you actually came here for, which is the basic Kali terminal commands and tools. Here, you'll be able to learn. I know CSIS actually had kind of like a bash workshop last week. You may have learned some of the commands that we'll go over today, but we'll also go over some commands that you'll find specifically in Kali or that you'll find useful in Kali. Here is an outline and again, an attendance sheet in case you have not already signed up for attendance. Again, attendance is important for both letting us know how many people are interested, letting sponsors know how many people are interested in our club so that we can then fund events for the club, as well as if you are interested in voting in our election, so you can vote on the next executive team, then that is also important as well. On the outline here, you can see all of the commands and concepts we'll be going over, from moving around the Linux terminal, getting familiar with it, getting familiar with some of the tools and ways to modify and get access to data from files, as well as some network stuff. So that includes netcat and SSH. SSH, we will actually be, I think, a command that you'll see a lot in your degree, especially starting second year, third year, and so on. Now, I'm gonna give it maybe like 10 more seconds for people to sign up if they haven't. And then maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're gonna move on. Now, first thing we're gonna be going over, by the way, if you have Kali installed, if you have Linux installed, or if you have Git installed, you will have access to something called Git Bash. This is a Bash terminal. This is a Linux, this is the thing that Linux uses. And although Kali uses something called Z shell or Zish, they are very, very, very similar and can be used in basically the same way. If you want to follow along during the workshop, you can use this. Any commands that we go over should be valid in here, or most commands. Not all of them, as this is not technically a Kali terminal, but like 99% of the commands we go over will be available in here. Now, first thing we need to know is, how do we move around? To move around, we use a command called cd. cd stands for change directory. In order to move from one folder to another on your computer, you're going to use the cd command. Whenever I say the word directory, that just means folder. So if I go over to Kali here, I can see I have a Kali virtual machine open. Again, for future workshops, please have this installed. We have resources available on our website to go over this. You can also ask anybody on the server how to go about installing Kali. I'm going to open up a terminal. And I'm going to scroll in here. You can see we kind of have this little place where we can type text. So again, going over the cd command, if I have a folder, I actually probably should go over ls as well. ls is a command where you can list directories or you can list files in a directory. You can see I have a few folders here. Let's say I wanted to go into my videos folder. I would type cd, a space, and then whatever folder I wanted to enter. In this case, since I'm getting into the videos folder, I would type videos. Now you can see up here, it's showing me that I'm now inside of this squiggly /videos location. In Kali, it will tell you where you're located in your terminal. The squiggly, as you'll learn later, is referred to as home. This is the home folder for your user on the computer. So this is like saying if you have multiple users, you have yourself, your brother, your sister, mom, dad. and you all use the same computer for whatever reason. Horrible idea for security, please. But it will be whatever folder is associated with your own user on the computer. Now, in order to move back, let's say I wanted to go back a folder, accidentally entered the wrong one. We would type cd space and ... And I believe I have this shown here as well. Yeah, so here are a few commands. So you see cd into a folder called documents, or a directory called documents. If I wanted to move back, I would type cd space and 2 dots. This refers to the folder above you. So if I do cd ... you can see I have gone from home/videos back into home. And if I type ls again to list, go over this command next, you'll see that I have all of these commands available, or sorry, all of these folders available. If I wanted to move to the root directory is the lowest level folder in your computer. This means that the root directory contains every single other file on your computer. Everything on your computer can eventually be redirected all the way back up to your root directory. So if I go onto my Kali and I type cd/, what this is going to do, as you can see, it's changed my directory to be just slash. If ls, this is kind of what a Linux root folder looks like. It has a bunch of folders. Won't go over what all of them mean today, but that's how you would enter it if you wanted to. If I wanted to, again, go back to home, so I'm in my root folder. I want to go back to my home folder really quick. I don't want to find it somewhere on my computer. I would type cd space, and then can anyone guess, maybe someone who doesn't know, but can guess what symbol I would use to move to my home directory? Well, you know. No? I would use the squiggly, or I would use this tilde, and this would move me back into my home directory. Any questions about how cd works? No? All right. Now, you saw me use this a couple times. There is a command called ls. What ls does is it lists all of the files and folders inside of the current directory. So you can also attribute the commands or the functions that you do inside of your terminal to things that you would do inside of a kind of like a folder GUI. So you can see here I'm in my home folder. If I'm doing cd, I'm going, okay, cd videos, I'm double clicking on the videos folder. I have a file in there. And if I'm going back, so if I click this back button, that's equivalent to saying cd and ... so move back a directory. If I go to, let's say, my root directory, so I can actually go into the bar here and type slash, which sends me to my root directory. If I wanted to go back to home, I could click the Kali right here. Kali is my user on the machine, and this is equivalent to saying cd home. All of these kinds of movements can kind of be translated between those terminal commands and actually using a GUI, like so. ls is a command, as I was going over, that allows you to display files inside of your directory. So you saw me use it a couple times here, which we just used it last. All it does is it tells you what's in here, what's in the thing that I specified. If you don't specify any like folders or files after the ls command, it'll just tell you whatever folder you're in, all of the directories, all of the files in there. And there are actually a couple of what are called flags or options for ls. The most used ones or most important ones are A or -A and L or -L. A displays all files. So you know how some computers or a lot of computers have the ability to hide files. So these are files that you don't necessarily want to see, you don't want others to see. You can hide them. -A will reveal every single file in a folder, regardless of whether or not it's hidden. -L will basically display all files in a longer format that shows more information about them, like the owner of the file, the permissions they have. I believe when it was created, its size, stuff like that. And I can actually show you about that. If I do ls-l, you'll see it kind of goes into a different format, and it shows all of the permissions on the left. You don't need to know what those mean necessarily right now. Then it shows a bunch of other information that you might find useful. You can also do ls-a. ls-a will show you everything in the folder. And you can see in my home folder, suddenly there's a lot more stuff than if I were to just do ls. Everything that has a dot in front of it in Linux is a hidden folder or file or folder. If you put a dot in front of the name, that will make it hidden. However, again, ls-a will reveal all of them. You can also put these two together. You can do ls space dash la. And what this will do, or al, also works. But what it does is it shows all of the more long information on all of the files. So not only just the normally visible files, but also all of the hidden files. If you ever find that your terminal is too cluttered, you can type the command clear, and it will clear a terminal. Very complicated, I know. But if you ever find that you like having a clearer screen, you can simply type the clear command, and it will basically remove any clutter from your screen or from your terminal. In order to make folders, you can do the mkdir command, or makedir. This makes a new directory. In order to do that, you would type the make directory command, space, and then whatever the directory name you want is. So in this case, if I wanted to make a directory called, you can see I have bash history there, so it shows what I've done before. I can make a directory called Linux Workshop Intro. If I do ls, you can see that suddenly I now have a directory in my computer called Linux Workshop Intro, and I can actually cd into it. Intro. And now I'm in the Linux Workshop Intro folder. Now, another cool feature about the terminal is that it has autocomplete. If you have a really long folder name like Linux Workshop Intro, instead of typing up the whole thing and deleting typos and yada, 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 what you can do is you can say your command, and then if you're specifying a file or folder, what you can do is you can say part of it, and then if you press tab, your computer will try to autocomplete to whatever it thinks is the right thing. If there are multiple things that start with, let's say, LIN, and then I press tab. So if I make dir Linux other folder, like so, if I type cd lin, what it's going to do is it's going to autocomplete to Linux, because that's the biggest thing that it can autocomplete to. And if I press tab again, it'll say, okay, there are a couple things you could go for here. You could go for Linux other folder, or you could go for Linux Workshop Intro. And from there, you could say, you could put in a couple more characters, and then press tab again, and it'll autocomplete. Getting used to autocompleting will make you very, very fast in the terminal, and it'll make you avoid typos a lot easier. It's just very convenient. Now, make directory is a pretty simple command, not much complicated to it. It's also equivalent, again, to going into your going into your folder GUI and right-clicking and saying create folder and naming the folder. It's the exact same thing, except you're doing it from the terminal. Now, up next is the touch command. Touch command is named a little weirdly, but all it does is it creates a new empty file on your computer. So if I were to say do touch file called file Linux, like so, what it's going to do is it's just going to make a new empty file on my computer called file Linux. Nothing special. It doesn't have any information. Later, I'll show you how to actually put information into the file and maybe edit the file and do some other cool things with it. But touch is a very simple command. It is equivalent, again, to going into your folder and file GUI and clicking create document empty file. Something like so, or new text file like Windows, something like that. Yes, question?
Why are there two commands the same? Like, why use touch if you use mkdir?
So there's a difference between a directory and a file. A directory is basically like a folder on your computer. It creates a folder that you can put other folders and files into. A file is like a Word document, right? Or a text document. You can't put like other files inside of that file. Well, maybe you can encrypt files inside of that file, but you can't like store other stuff inside of there like on a regular computer. Touch is just making a new file, like for example, a text file that you could write stuff in, that you could write code in or whatever you want. Does that clear things up? Okay. Awesome. Any other questions so far? No? All good? Awesome. So moving on, we've just created a bunch of clutter on our computer. We want to remove it. I don't want these useless Linux folders, and I don't want this useless new file. So I'm going to use the rm command to remove it. Now, in order to remove a file, all you have to do is type rm and then the name of the file. Now, the file I want to remove is file_Linux. You can see there, I typed file underscore, and then it suddenly auto-completed because I pressed tab. Again, it's a little faster. Not as useful for this case, but if you have like a super, super long 20, 30 character file name, whatever, very useful. If I type rm file Linux, and I ls again, you can see that it is gone from my home directory. Now, if I try to do the same thing on a directory or on a folder, let's say I try to remove Linux workshop intro. I press enter, it says cannot remove Linux workshop intro. It is a directory. What shall we do? Well, thankfully, there are a couple of options or flags that rm comes with. Rm, the -d or the -d option specifies that you want to remove an empty directory. So if there is a folder that is empty, it has nothing in it, then you can use the -d command to remove it. So let's do that. I believe if we go into Linux workshop intro and we ls, there is nothing in there. We can do ls-la just to confirm. The dot and dot mean nothing, or they do mean something. The dot means current directory, dot means previous directory or parent directory. This, if you see those, that means it's, or if you just see those, that means it's an empty folder. There's nothing inside of it. So if we go back, we go dot, and we do rm space -d Linux workshop intro. Suddenly, it is happy, it is satisfied. We can now properly delete a file or a folder from our computer. Now, what if I go into this remaining Linux folder and I put something in it like touch useless file? Now, suddenly in this folder, there is a useless file. And I try to do rm space -d Linux other folder. It's not going to like that. It's going to say, well, hold up, there's something in there. I don't know. I'm not going to remove this. It's too risky. I don't know what to do with this other file that's in there. So there's another option that you have. There is the -r option. The -r option says remove everything recursively inside of the folder first. So go into the folder, go into any other folders inside there, and go find all the files in there, and then delete all the files and then remove the folders. So what it's doing is it's basically completely removing a folder and everything inside of it from the inside out. So if we specify rm-r, then we're saying, okay, I want to recursively remove this directory. And so I can specify this Linux other folder, and it will happily delete everything that is inside of there. Now, there is something that I think is important for everyone to know. If anyone ever tells you to run this command, don't. Especially not like this. What this will do, can anyone guess who doesn't know? What will rm space -rf / do? F means force. Any guesses? Any raise of hands? Yes.
So you're gonna start the whole thing, but instead of starting from that specific directory, you're starting at the source.
Yes.
Like from root.
From root, that's right. And what is in root?
Existence.
Yeah, that's right. Everything on your computer. If you do rm-rf/, say goodbye to your computer. Never run this, ever. Or create a virtual machine and give it a try. Yeah, no. I'm just telling you this because it's a secret to our CTF. Don't let anyone know I told you that. But yeah, never run that command. Now, CP. CP is a command to copy files. If I wanted to have 2 copies of a file, let's say it's my, I don't know, work documents, I would use the CP command in order to take whatever file I wanted to copy and then move it somewhere, or give it another file in the same directory, but with a different name. Now, if I had a file called, for example, Daniel's secret information, don't look, please. And I wanted to copy it because it's very important information and I want to make sure I don't lose it, then I would use the CP command. And I don't want to type out this entire long garbage name. So I'm going to type Dan and then press tab and look, it auto-completed. Wonderful. So I'm going to copy this to maybe another file saying definitely not Daniel's secret information. And what this has done is after I made the new file and I copied it, you can see that there are two files. If I were to, and I'll go over these commands soon. If I remove both of those files, and again, I'm sure you can guess how this is related to. This is related to like the folder GUI here, how you would add and remove full files and copy files, stuff like that. If I were to have, let's say, I'll go over what this is doing in a moment or later in the workshop. But I've just made a new file called hi there, and inside of that file, echo just takes whatever string you put after it and it puts it into your terminal. That angle bracket or that arrow says take that output and store it inside of a file. Overwrite whatever's inside that file and store it inside of a file. Cat says show me what's inside of this file. Hi there. And what it tells me is, well, hi there, because that's what I stored inside of that file. Now, if I wanted to copy this, again, just showing that this is copying all of the contents of this file, if I CP hi there into how you doing, now I have 2 files, hi there, how you doing. If I show the contents of hi there, it's hi there. And if I show the contents of how you doing, it is still hi there. So again, just confirming, it is copying the contents of one file to another file and keeping both files. Any questions? Nope. All right. MV. MV is very similar to copy, but instead of making a new file, it takes the current file you have and it moves it to a new location, or it moves it to a new file name. So if I had hi there, and I wanted to rename it how are you, I would say MV hi there, and then I would give it a new file name. So if I wanted to name it how are you, I would say MV hi there, how are you? And this is basically saying move the file hi there to basically a new file called how are you. This is just a renaming. You can see now, hi there is gone, how are you is now in the folder. And again, if I cat, it still says hi there. It's the same file. Now, if I wanted to actually move it to a new directory, instead of specifying a new file name, what I would do, so if I take how you doing, and I wanted to say move it to my documents, I would instead specify documents. And what this is going to do is it's going to see that there is a folder in this directory, in this home directory called documents, and it's going to say, okay, I'm just going to take this how you doing file and move it into the documents folder instead of renaming it to the word documents. You can see now how you doing is gone. There is only the one documents folder in here. And if I go into documents, and I ls, you can say I already have a few other things, but I have how you doing. And again, this is the same file. Any questions about how, I was about to say how you doing works, but any questions about how any of the commands work so far? CP, MV, touch, anything else? Yes.
So I use something from inside the directory to something to, like, if I have two files,
Yes.
I basically move one file inside another.
What you do, it's basically renaming. It's taking the current file and then giving it a new name. That's
And
all.
Instead of overwriting something already there, it just puts it inside of it.
If you try to move one file into a file that already exists, so far bar 1, bar 2, for example, yeah. Yeah.
So like if you don't specify.
Yeah. Usually you don't want to move one file into another pre-existing file. Not something you usually want to do. Any other questions? No? All right. Now, we've gone over all of the maneuvering stuff and making simple files and deleting them. Now let's get into actually getting and setting the data inside of files. First, we may need to know what kind of file we're working with. Let's say I have an image of a cat. So let me go to the internet and download an image of a cat. Cat photo. Let me take, I don't know, where's a cool one? Here's a cool cat. So let's download this cat. And I'll move it from my desktop into my home folder. And I just did that by dragging with the computer. So if I go back into my terminal, you can see if I go back into my home folder, I'm currently in documents, I'll do cd ... to move back. And ls, I now have close-up of a cat wearing sunglasses while sitting royalty-free image 157175145.jpg. I don't like that name. I'm going to rename it. How am I going to do that? I'm going to use the move command. I'm going to say mv. I'm going to take this long garbage name that I don't like. I'm going to simply name it cat.jpg. Boom. We now have cat.jpg. Wonderful. Now, let's check what kind of file this is. We can tell from the extension it's probably a JPEG file, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. The extension is just kind of an identifier. It is possible for a file of one type to have the extension of another. So it's important to check any files you have. Let's say if you download it from a CTF challenge, that you know what kind of file it really is. So let's check file cat.jpg. Looks like it's a JPEG image. It has yada, 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 information, aspect ratio. It's 2120 by 1415 pixels. It has a bunch of information and it confirms that, yes, this is a JPEG image. Now, what if I were to name this, instead of cat.jpg, it's like a cat.txt. It's an innocent cat.txt, right? If I type file cat.txt, is it going to be a text file or a JPEG file or something else? Any guesses? So when I type file, do you think it would tell me JPEG or do you think it would tell me text or something else? JPEG. Let's see. That's right. even though it's called cat.txt, it is still a JPEG file. You can open it just like a regular photo. It does not matter that it has the .txt extension. It is still a JPEG file. Maybe this makes you think about how some malware works. It makes you think it's innocent, but in reality, it is very much not. So yeah, that's how file works. Simple command just gives you some information about the file. Any questions? No? All right. Echo, I used this earlier, if anyone remembers. All it does is it basically takes whatever you put in it and spits it out back at you. You may think this is useless, but it can actually be very useful in some scenarios. So if I were to just say, echo, hello world, it tells me hello world. There are a couple of flags you can give this. You can give it -E to interpret escape characters being like the backslash you might find, or in some shells, I believe in the Kali shell, it's actually a percentage as well, maybe a $sign. But it will interpret escape characters. So maybe you've programmed in like Python, Java, C, like \n is a new line. Or you can also include the N option or the N flag. And what this does is it says, okay, I don't want any new lines at the end of whatever I echoed. So just remove it off the end. So echo -E, hello world. And then if I do like /n, you can see it interpreted those /n's as new lines. If I did not include that, it would not. It would just interpret it as a bunch of, oh, never mind. I thought it would not interpret that. Well, either way, I guess it interprets it. Usually with echo, you don't even use any tags. You just echo whatever you want to echo. Sometimes you might want to remove any new lines from the end. Not necessary, most of the time. But yeah, very simple command. Cat went over this as well. All it does is it spits out the contents of whatever file you specified to it. So if I have a file, for example, how are you? I say, cat, how are you? And it says, hi there. That means that inside of that file is the text, hi there. That's just whatever the contents of the file are. Now, if I try to cat.txt, we remember that that is a JPEG file. JPEG files usually don't turn out very good in text. That is not very readable. I imagine this is what my professors look at when they read my essays. But yeah, this is what it looks like when you try to cat any file that isn't just normal ASCII text or something like that. But yeah, it basically tells you or tries to interpret the text inside the file and spits it back out at you. Very useful command. Any questions about any commands we covered? Yes, no, maybe so. All right. Strings, it's very, very similar to cat. However, what it does is it tries to get rid of all of the garbage. So all of the like unknown characters and all the weird characters, and it tries to just give you back all the readable stuff. So if I try to strings, how are you, for example, it'll still tell me hi there. It shows me the same thing as cat, right? Because all of this is readable language. All this is readable stuff. However, if I strings cat.txt, you can see it got rid of all of that like super garbage, like question mark symbols and diamonds, and instead gave me back whichever characters it thought were readable or were understandable. Does that make sense? Anyone confused? Anyone unsure? No questions? No? All good? Oh, yes.
So it just removes the question marks and like, is there a specific symbol it removes?
It basically removes anything that is not an ASCII character. It removes anything that is not like human readable as a symbol or as a number or as a letter. Good.
Yeah. All right. Clear to clear the terminal. Let's move on. Less also displays the contents of a file, but sometimes if a file has a very, very, very large amount of text, so it's like this huge, I don't know, binary file. Sometimes you want to just look at it all and be able to scroll through it. However, your terminal will eventually stop, or it will print everything in the file, but it will start erasing stuff at the very top of the terminal. It will kind of start cutting it off and you can't go too far up. By using less, you'll be able to scroll through all of the information in the file. And also you may be able to like search, you may be able to use like find mechanics in order to look for specific strings inside of it. And I'll show you that if I use less on our wonderful cat file. Cat.txt may be a binary file. That's fine. Going to click Y to see it anyways. And so now I can kind of just scroll through all of this information. My terminal may have deleted all of that stuff at the top. In fact, there's so much here, it probably would have. But here, I can scroll through all this wonderful information that I definitely understand. And yeah, I would be able to find maybe any hidden stuff in here that someone may have placed there, or look at any cool information. Less is just useful if you want to quickly take a look at a large file, see if anything sticks out. So, any questions about any of the things we've covered so far? Nope. All right. Oh yeah, if you have a program that you run, so you can see this /program1, you can also do what's called piping, which I'll go over later, and you can pipe it into less, meaning you take the output of that command and you put it into less to take a look at, which we'll go over later as well. chmod. This is basically a command that allows you to change or modify file permissions. So let's say you are on your mom's computer and she is, or you have your own files on there, you have your work documents because you're a little kid and you don't own your own computer, you're in like, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade, use your mom's computer, but you are more computer savvy than her. You want to make sure she can't read your school documents for whatever reason. Then you can use chmod in order to basically remove certain permissions from those files. Make it unreadable, make it so she's not allowed to take a look at them. So if I go and I make school documents, touch school documents, what I can do is if I ls-l, so again, this lists permissions, this lists file information in a long sort of format. You can see this kind of weird string of dashes, R's, and W's. What this shows is the read, write, and execute permissions of a file. These are 3 kinds of permissions that a file can have. Reading permissions means that the file can be read by a user. Write permissions means that the file can be written to and edited by a user. Execute means that the file can be run. So for example, if you have a game, right? So your user can run this game. If it has executable permissions, you'll be able to run it. If it does not, you will not be allowed to. That is what these are, W's, and I'll show you how to add X's to the file. So let's say I wanted to remove read permissions from my school documents for whatever reason. I would say chmod, and there's a lot of ways to use chmod. I'm just going to show you a couple ways. You can say plus or minus to say, okay, I want to add or remove permissions from the file. If I wanted to remove read permissions, we can see it currently has it. I would say minus to remove and R to remove all read permissions from all groups. So that would be removing read permissions from the user, from the owner of the file, from the groups that it belongs to, and just in general globally on the computer for all users. So if I say chmod -R, and I say school documents. Click enter, and I do ls-L again. You can see now that it only has that one write permission. I have completely removed all read permissions from that file. Let's say I wanted to give it full execute permissions. I would say chmod plus x. So plus being add permissions, x being executable. And I would once again say school documents. No, I do. And this would be basically allow you to, again, if I do ls-L, you can see the X is there. It would allow you to run the file if it was like a binary. You can do this for all of read, write, and execute permissions, either add or remove them. Is anyone confused about what we went over? This is a little more complicated than some of the other commands we've discussed so far. All good? All right. Now, you can see there are a couple of more examples, removing or adding read permissions to a file, removing write and execute permissions from a file. Running a file. So let's say this was actually like, I don't know, a Python file. So let's say like print echo print hello world. This is just a Python string. I'm going to put that into my school documents. Cat school documents. I don't have permissions to cat it because, again, if I look at the permissions, it is not readable. I'm not allowed to see the contents of this file. So let me reintroduce read permissions to my school documents. If I do ls-L again, you can see it now has full read permissions. If I cat school documents, you can see that I have put the wrong thing in there. Let me get rid of these backslashes. Oh yeah, and by the way, you might be wondering how I can quickly go through all of these commands. I am pressing the up and down arrows on my keyboard. The up and down arrows on my keyboard allow me to quickly go through my recent history in my bash terminal. So it allows me to go through what commands I've recently run in case I need to rerun them quickly so I don't have to type them all out again. So you can see now it's this Python string hello world. And so now I can execute it. So if I do, for example, if this had another line, let me actually do something real quick. I'll go over what I'm doing now as well. Maybe some of you have already heard of them, but if I go in here, do // user // all right. All I did there was I opened a text editor and I quickly edited the file. If I do // and then I have my school documents, I just ran the file as a Python file. All right. So what // means is it says, okay, look in the current directory and then take the school documents file in this current directory. This interprets it as saying, okay, there is a command or an executable file in this folder that I can run. Here's a fun fact. Whenever you run things like cat or SSH or strings or ls or cd or anything like that, this is actually a file that you're running. The file that you're running, whenever you don't specify a folder to look inside of, so whether that be like, I don't know, user share, stuff like that, or whether it be // if you don't specify the folder, then it's going to look in a few places on your computer. Particularly, the most notable ones are user bin and bin. These are folders in the Linux file system that basically hold a bunch of important commands that you can run. All right. Any questions, concerns about how running files works? No? All good? Okay. Moving on. you can see here there are a few examples. So run a file in the current directory called foo is /foo. Running a file called bar from your home directory would be the home/bar. And then running a file called baz, which is located inside of your share folder, which is located inside of your user folder, which is located inside of your root folder. You would specify / to designate I'm looking from the root folder, user /share/baz. So you can actually combine a bunch of folders or files into a single string instead of having to go, okay, cd into root, and then cd into user, and then cd into share, and then run baz. You can do it all from wherever on your computer. All you have to do is specify its location. Now, text editors. You may have seen me just use one called Vim. There are a few options you have with text editors. The most notable ones that I have used are Nano and Vim, but also a lot of people like Emacs. There's kind of like a funny war that goes on between Emacs and Vim users, and they argue about which is best. The answer is Nano. Yeah, I can hear some cheers from the crowd. I know Josh is like staring daggers into my soul. Nano's okay, actually Visual Studio Code. Yeah, there we go. Visual Studio Code is the best one, but in terms of terminal editing, Nano. But yeah, anyways. In order to open a file with a text editor, you would specify the text editor's name or command to open it, and then you would specify the file that you want to open. So for example, if I were to use the best text editor, Nano, to open the school documents folder, I would specify Nano, and I would specify school documents, and there we go. I've opened up the file inside of this Nano text editor, and I can move around, I can delete things, I can add things. And then you can see at the bottom all of the commands that Nano has in order to save, close, other stuff that a text editor can do. It's very, 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 very bare bones. It's very useful for quickly making a small edit, not like working on a big project. For that, you'd want to use a more sophisticated editor. Like Vim, or Visual Studio Code, or Emacs. But for simple, small edits, Nano's fine. To save in Nano, you do Control-O to write out, press Enter, and then Control-X to exit. There's also Vim, which you saw me open. To be honest, I don't mind Vim. I never use it for large projects. I sometimes use it for slightly longer edits compared to Nano. But I can go over some of the commands here in the next slide for Vim. Basically, it has a few modes. As a beginner, there's kind of a joke that the first problem that people who use Vim have to solve is how do you exit Vim? Yeah, basically, Vim is a very strange text editor that has a couple modes. In order to actually write, you have to press I, and you'll see insert at the bottom, which means now you can actually do stuff. So yada, yada, yada. And then if you wanted to stop, what you're currently in, if you press I, is called insert mode. That means it is now a normal text editor-ish. To leave insert mode, you press escape, and now you're in what's called command mode. At this point, people are like, oh, okay, I want to close Vim. Well, there's the problem. You have to run a command in order to close Vim. If you want to write, which means to save a file and then quit it, you would do colon, so that's shift colon, WQ, which means write and then quit. And if I press enter, it's going to quit Vim. Congratulations, you can stop having a panic attack, you've just left Vim. You could also do just write or W to save your progress, but still keep writing in Vim. And then you could also do Q just to quit it and just exit it. However, if you've made some edits, for example, you're like, okay, print, this is a string. And you've made your edits, yada, yada. I want to leave Vim.
Uh-oh. Why is it telling me I can't leave? Please, please, please. At this point, you do the panic option, which is to say, quit exclamation mark, which is quit but loud. So scream at it and say, I don't want to be in here anymore. And that's how you leave Vim if you've made changes and you don't want to save them and you're done using Vim forever. Now, there's also Emacs, which I have never used. Maybe I would like that more. I don't know for Nano. But here are a bunch of the options you have in the different text editors that you can use. Again, just the basics like saving, exiting, editing, stuff like that. There's a lot more to these text editors, especially Vim and Emacs. They have I think they have plugins that you can install. They have different versions. They have a lot of commands and stuff you can do with them. This is just a super surface level introduction to letting you know what these are. You could have entire courses on how to use these editors, which is why you should instead use VS Code. But okay. But now we'll go over piping. Piping is a concept where you take the output of one file, so whatever is standard out, that means whatever is outputted, that would be outputted into your terminal. So for example, if I echo something, right, it's echoing whatever string I put in there out into my terminal. If I wanted to then take that string and put it into another command or into another file or into another program as input, then I would say pipe. So that's that vertical line, which is shift and under the button under your backspace. And then whatever program you wanted to use that as input in. So I can show you an example. There is a command called base64 on Kali. What it does is it either encodes or decodes things into basically what's called base64, which is like an encryption thing. If I echo, so again, I'm echoing, my name is Daniel. And I want to take this output and I want to pipe it into base64. So you can see, first of all, if I just echo my name is Daniel, it's going to tell me my name is Daniel. Lovely, I didn't know that. And if I pipe it, then I can pipe it into, for example, base64. And what base64 does is when it receives input from standard in, it will just encode it in base64. You could do the same thing to decode it if you wanted to decode base64. Maybe you'll do this sometimes in CTFs. They often encode flags or important messages in base64. You could do echo and then whatever base64 string, and then you don't need to remember this. I usually just use online decoders and encoders, but base64-D decodes it. There you go. So that's how you take output of one thing, put it into another thing. Any questions so far about how these things work? Any concerns? Anything at all? No? Okay. So to run multiple commands, if I wanted to echo one thing and then I wanted to echo, or then I wanted to, let's say, cat, I don't know how you're doing that file I made, I can use either 1 or 2 ampersands. There is an important difference between these two that can matter. If I say I want to run program 1 and program 2 with a single ampersand, that means I'm going to run them at the same time. So my terminal is going to spawn 2 processes and it's going to run them simultaneously. If I specify 2 ampersands, what it's going to do is instead it's going to run the first thing. It's going to start a process for the first thing. Once that process ends, only then will it start the next process, or only then will it start the next command. This can be important in certain scenarios where you want one thing to lead after another instead of wanting to do 2 things simultaneously. So I can show that here. If I echo, my name is Dan, and I'm in 2nd year.
you can see there, it first ran my name is Dan, gave this little string of like, yeah, okay, that process is done. I'm in second year, it's done. It ran both the commands. Relatively simple, but can be useful in certain scenarios. Any questions? You can maybe also try doing the same thing with 2. You can see there it didn't tell me about like any special information or numbers because it didn't start like multiple processes and terminals at the same time to run the both processes. It just ran one after the other. Any questions? Going once, going twice. Awesome. Now, redirection. You saw me do this with echo. Basically, all it does is it takes whatever standard output, instead of taking it as input into another program, what it does is it puts it into, if you look, kind of takes it as output into a file. So if I, for example, do echo, my name is Dan, and I do one arrow and I do Dan's name, what this is going to do is it's going to make a new file called Dan's name. You can say use cat, or check the contents. This is my name is Dan. If I do echo, my name is Dan, or my name is Daniel, or not Dan, and I put it into Dan's name with a single greater than symbol or right arrow, what it's going to do is it's actually going to overwrite the previous contents of the file and replace it with whatever the input was. Now, if I don't want to do that, but I instead want to put it at the end or append it to the end of the file, what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to do 2 greater than symbols. And this says, okay, I don't want to overwrite, I just want to append to the end of it. And you say, the text above is lying. This is going to say, okay, take the text above is lying, output it into the file, and append it below whatever text already exists. And if I cat Dan's name again, you can see it did not overwrite this time. It says my name is not Dan, the text above is lying. You can also output to basically to an error. I can't remember the last time I used this consciously, if I ever did. It was in a copy-pasted command from Stack Overflow from like 11 years ago. So don't worry about 2 and then arrows. You will never ever need to like know, oh yeah, I need to do that. No. grep. Grep is a useful tool. If anyone knows regular expressions, you may love this tool. It's a command that basically lets you filter output and then, or filter string, and then get back specific information based on what you specify. So for example, if you've ever used like Control F, for example, Control F in your browser, some browsers support regular expressions, I think. Or in VS Code definitely supports regular expressions. You can basically look for something inside of a string and it'll return you everything that you're looking for. It'll return you all of the information you're looking for. So if I go grep, or if I take my file, so I cat Dan's name, and I have a couple of lines of text here, right? I pipe that into grep and I give it a string. I want to look for every string with the name, or every line with the string Dan in it. So I'm going to say Dan. What it's going to do is going to search the whole file for the word Dan. Obviously, this file is just 2 lines, but this works for files of any size. I press enter, and it gives me the line, my name is not Dan, with Dan being highlighted, showing me where it is in the string. I can also specify, you can see if I do Dan, capital D, it actually doesn't return anything. I can specify that I want it to ignore case. So I want it to not care whether it's uppercase or lowercase. If it includes the string in any case, it gives it back to me. You can see it now that I put that in, it includes it. I can also do extended. I can use the E tag, the E flag, to say, okay, I want to use more like extended regular expressions, like concepts, or terminal, or like syntax in order to search for more complicated strings. one that maybe if you've participated in CTFs before, you might have used to search for flags or things inside of a file is saying, let's say for our CTF, right? Usually a flag will have an identifiable string before it. So like let's say it's Magpie for our CTF. It will have the word Magpie right before it. And then in curly brackets, it will have some sort of like leet speak usually. So it'll have the identifiable string, curly brackets, and then something in between. And in order to use grep, something I've done in previous CTFs, and maybe you'll recognize this regex, is this. And so basically, you don't need to know what this, like you don't know exactly what this does. This just basically says, look for the word magpie with anything in between, ignoring case. But you can, if you know regular expressions and you can use it well, grep will be a very, very powerful tool for you. There's nothing called magpie inside of that file. So, any questions about how grep or any of the previous commands we just went over work? Just no? Okay, awesome. We're almost done here. Sudo. You can see the comic here is from XKCD. There are some excellent comics from this guy. I believe his name is Randall Munroe. I think he used to work for NASA. Now he makes really funny comics. Sudo is basically a command that says, you do what I tell you to do. If it is not letting you do the thing, you tell it, shut up, I do it. So, politely. Now, if, for example, I do not have read permissions on a file, right? So I have, let's say, if I remove plus x, or sorry, minus r, Dan's name, I now no longer have read permissions for this file. So if I try to read it, it's saying no. I say, yes, I do. I'm going to type in my password. And if you are what is called a super user, sudo stands for super user do, which means for a privileged user on the machine, like an administrator, like the owner of the machine, if you have permissions, do the command regardless of permissions. Sometimes with sudo, you can specify there are specific commands you're allowed to do, others that you're not. But for example, here you can see if I'm just saying, oh, just as a regular user, I want to print out Dan's name. It's not going to let me. I say, yeah, you are. And then it allows me to do so. Make sure if you're using sudo, you know what you're doing, at least for the most part, because sometimes if you use sudo to run certain commands, sudo mrf/, very bad things are going to happen. So make sure you know kind of what you're doing. There's also a command sudo -l, or an option for sudo, which is -l. And this basically says what kinds of users have different sudo permissions. So for example, you can see here, user Kali may run the following commands on Kali, and it says, I can basically use all of the commands on Kali with sudo. I can do whatever I want with sudo. If a user is given only specific sudo permissions, so they're not allowed to run all commands, you would see by running sudo -l that only specific commands are permitted to be used with sudo for that user. So this is very useful if you don't know what you're allowed to do with sudo, or if you don't know if your user is very privileged on the computer. Use sudo -l, see what you're allowed to do, and then go on from there. It's basically like sudo list permissions. We're good? All right. Let's see. I think they're, yeah. Okay, we're just about to be there. So diff is a command that basically takes two files and compares them. If you have two files that you think are the same, and it's like one is compiling, one is not, for example, in C, I hate C. But let's say there's like, you can't tell what the difference is. You would do diff C program 1, C program 2, compare them, and find that there's like this hidden little Unicode character of 0 width, 0 length that's screwing up your compilation that your friend put in there to give you 5 hours of stress right before deadline. So diff is a useful command. You can see if I take, let's say, diff, it's going to tell me everything's different, but Dan's name and how are you? Again, I don't have permissions. Yes, I do. It basically tells me what are the differences between each file. Next up, hex editors. This is something you will not use too frequently, but can be useful from time to time. Basically, every file has a hex information. So for example, if I hex, or if I use XXD to show the hexadecimal information of a file, so for example, cat.txt, the JPEG file, cat.txt, you can see it kind of gives us a bunch of information about like the hexadecimal values. Looks like garbage. If you may not, even if you don't understand what it means now, later it can be very useful. This just shows you the output. If you wanted to actually edit it, you could use the hexedit command. Hexedit is a hex editor that allows you to manually change the values inside using hexadecimal values instead of like ASCII or something like that. So if I hex edit cat.jpg, sorry, cat.txt, my bad. You can see I can now scroll through it. I can manually edit information, and then I can, like exit or something. Control X to exit, save changes. No. And here are a few commands for hexedit. Again, you don't really need to remember this. If you ever need to use hexedit, you can just search up how to use hexedit. It's like at any time, and I realize I haven't mentioned this, in cybersecurity, you're not going to remember everything. You will always be Googling things. You will always be searching things up. The only time you will remember something is if you have like literally done it for months over and over again. Like if you CD or LS, that's only the stuff you remember. A lot of the time, I have super complex commands in like that I write out whenever I'm doing CTF challenges. And sometimes when I'm like with friends, they're like, "How are you doing that?" And then I'm like, "Well, my bash history remembers it, so I have no idea what this is doing, but it seems to work." So anytime you are looking for a command, pro tip: look on the internet or your bash history, and save yourself some trouble. Now, a few last things. 2 more things, and then you will be able to test everything we've covered today in an actual challenge. Yeah. So using the internet, netcat is cat, but over the net, over the internet. It basically connects to a server. So some service is being hosted on a website, and you connect to it, and it outputs it and to your computer, and maybe you can like give it input and interact with it. So, for example, there's a website. If you're a beginner and you're looking to get into CTFs or you're interested in CTFs, Pico CTF is an excellent website to do that, and they have this server that you can connect to, or you can netcat into. This is a challenge that they have, so let me clear. In order to run netcat, you say nc, the IP that you are connecting to, and the port that you are connecting to. So if I wanted to netcat to mars.picoctf.net at port 31890, then I would say netcat mars.picoctf.net at, what was the port again? 31890? 31890, okay. 31890, and I think this is currently up. Yeah. So you can see this is one of their challenges. This is sometimes how CTFs will host challenges for you to connect to and to try and exploit, yada, yada, yada. I see a share. It gives me incorrect. Sadly, I did not solve this challenge by saying chair. Now, netcat is also can be used to a more complicated extent. usually as a beginner, you'll only use it in this context of netcat IP port. I have personally, I think there's only one other way I've used netcat, which is a more complicated topic that I'd love to talk about more. But yeah, netcat, if you're ever on like Pico CTF or other websites that host things to netcat into, this is how you would run the command. And finally, last command, SSH. You will see this in your degree if you are in computer science. You will use it. The computer science department has a bunch of computers and servers that you can connect to for your assignments. Particularly if you're taking computer science like 3 through 9, sometimes you'll have some of your assignments on there that you need to connect to and do. Or if you are in like computer science 331, I'm currently enrolled in that, they'll have you connect to the Linux servers to do some work on there or to copy files to there. But what SSH does is it gives you a secure shell. A shell is basically like what we're using in our terminal. When you open up your terminal, you're using what's called a shell, which is just like an interactive environment where you can do stuff on a computer. When you do SSH, you're saying, okay, I want to remotely connect over the internet to a computer that is hosting SSH or hosting itself with SSH. And if I know the credentials to this computer, I'm going to log in and I'm going to be able to have a shell, a terminal, just like this one for my own computer, but remotely. So I'm going to do it on another server. So this is useful in like IT when you're like, let's say you have like a Raspberry Pi setup. You don't want to like go and plug a monitor into it or whatever, yada, yada, yada. You just have it running in the background, but you have SSH on it. Like, okay, I want to SSH into my Raspberry Pi and I want to edit things on it with a terminal. That's just one example of how it works. Or if you're SSHing into the university servers, then you would use, like, for example, your computer science username at the Linux server IP address, and then you would use your credentials to log in there. And we're actually going to go over using SSH now. And this is where you will, if you haven't been following along in like your own Git bash terminal, or if you don't have a Git bash terminal or something similar, like if you're on a Mac, you could use the terminal there. But this is where you're actually going to be able to solve some challenges that I developed. So when you find a flag, there are going to be 4 flags here. Oh yeah, and also you can specify a port for SSH. One last thing, you can specify a port. In most cases, you won't do this because most SSH services are hosted on a default port 22, and when you SSH, it will automatically default to 22. However, if it is hosted on a unique port, as it is here, or as you'll see in a moment, it is here, then you can specify the port. If you want to leave a shell, you type exit and you're out. You want to leave the remote server, just say exit, you've left. Finally, put your knowledge to the test. Here is the challenge. You are tasked to SSH into the computer 134.209.47.17 at port 2222. And you have been given some credentials. There are the credentials, 3 wise magpies is the username. So that's the user on the computer. And then their password is ka. There are 4 flags. The way they look is, as I mentioned, there is a identifiable flag. So for our workshops and our challenges, it says UCSec. And then in between the curly brackets, there will be some text, usually like wheat speak, which means English or like words, but maybe some of the letters are like special characters or numbers. SSH is pre-installed on all modern machines. It is on Macs, it is on Linux, it is on Windows. You can use PowerShell, CMD, Terminal, PuTTY, Git bash, what have you, to use SSH and to connect to a server. So now, connect to this computer and start solving the challenges. There are, again, 4 flags for you to find.
Sorry, I wasn't here.
What happened? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna write the SSH command.
Okay, so connect with SSH to the server and try to find these 4 flags. Once you find them, what you can do is we have a bot, Orchid, on our server. What you're going to do is you're going to open up Discord and you're going to privately message Orchid the bot. And you're going to send Orchid your flag. If the flag is correct, then you will get points for our leaderboard. At the end of our, as we do more workshops and challenges, you will be able to see people's scores and progress on the leaderboard as they solve challenges. And eventually you can kind of brag that you're top however many or maybe first even on the leaderboard. So again, Delara is writing out here all of the credentials on the board so it's easier to see. I have provided a document in our Discord server in the workshop materials channel that is basically just a cheat sheet of all the commands that we went over today. If you don't remember any, which I don't expect you to remember most of them, especially if you're a beginner and you haven't gone over most of these commands, you can look at that cheat sheet and it will go over all of the examples that I gave for running those commands. So go ahead, connect to the computer. I can actually show myself connecting to it here.
Yes, you have a question.
Oh, yes. So on Discord, you can right-click it and then send message. Is there a specific command, or do you just have to send a flag?
You just have to send the flag.
If the flag is correct, it's gonna reply. If it's not, it's just gonna ignore you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Stuff here. Okay. We have a question in chat about, should I just run binaries? Maybe. That's up to you to figure out. Is it a binary? Do you run it? Do you maybe check out permissions? Do you do you try to cat it? That's up to you to figure out. I can show again on the stream the command here. SSH 3 wise magpies at, and then the IP was 134.209.4717 at port 2222. 134.209.4717 at port 2222. Let's enter, and it's going to ask for, well, it might say, I don't recognize this. You're going to say, yes, you recognize it, or you trust it. And it's going to ask for a password. You're going to say CAW, CAW, CAW. It's not going to show it typing in because it's a password, but it is typing in. Just press enter, and you should be able to get in. Yeah. There are 4 flags. So I'm going to give you a little bit to solve this challenge, or these challenges. The time is currently 7:53. So in about 5 minutes, I'd say, just a couple minutes before 8 o'clock, I will basically go over the solutions for the challenges. Yeah. All right. We've basically reached 8 o'clock, or it's 2 minutes to 8. So we're going to finish up the workshop here. This is basically just a thank you. I know we had a lot of technical difficulties. It's been an interesting couple of hours. But again, thank you everyone for coming to join us and coming to our first workshop of the year. We hope that future workshops will only improve in quality. So thank you again, and make sure, again, that you've signed attendance if you came here late. The QR codes are available when you click here. Make sure you sign this in case, just for our own information about how many people attend, for any sponsors potentially that can see how much people are engaged in our club and would want to sponsor us and help us grow and engage and bring events to the community. And thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining. We're gonna leave the challenges up for, I think, an additional day or so. I know we've had some technical difficulties along the way, but we really appreciate your presence. And yeah.